1. Let me tell you about this interesting 1971 Chevy C10 I found on Craigslist. This is one of those classic workhorses that's got quite a story to tell, and I'll be straight with you about what we're looking at here. This long bed custom deluxe pickup is rocking its original Hugger orange paint with a white top, which is pretty cool for a 50-year-old truck. With just under 97K original miles on the clock, it's packing a 350 V8 and an automatic transmission. It's got some nice features like power steering, front disc brakes, and it's wearing some mid-80s rally wheels. Being a Texas panhandle truck its whole life, it's managed to avoid the major rust issues that plague many of these old trucks. Now, let's be real here. This isn't a ready-to-drive vehicle. The seller's being honest about its condition. It hasn't run in years, though the engine does turn over by hand. There's some interior side rust above the windshield and the right cab door, and there's minor body damage on the left side of the cab. It's missing some parts too. No AC compressor or bracket, no bench seat, no floor covering, and it needs some exterior trim pieces. At $4,200, you're looking at a project truck that needs some love, but it's got good bones and a clean title. The fact that it's spent its entire life in Texas and isn't completely rusted out is definitely a plus. You'll need a trailer to get it home, but for someone looking to restore a classic C10, this could be a solid starting point. Just remember, you're buying a project, not a driver. 2. We're checking out this pretty interesting 1984 Ford Bronco I found on Craigslist for $4,000. Let me tell you, for a nearly 40-year-old SUV, this one's got some stories to tell. This Bronco's been with the same family since the early 90s, which is always a good sign, and it's packing that classic 351 Windsor V8 paired with the bulletproof C6 automatic transmission. With 124,000 miles on the clock, that's actually not too bad for its age. The seller's being straight up about this being a project, but honestly, it sounds like a solid foundation. What's really catching my eye here is that they're claiming no rust. And if you know these old Broncos, that's like finding a unicorn. Sure, there's some minor damage on the passenger door, but that's totally fixable. The interior's holding up well too, with good seats and side panels. It's got the factory AC, though no word if it's working, power steering, and the manual windows and seats, which means fewer things to go wrong. Look, I'm going to be real with you. At $4,000, you're not getting a show-ready Bronco. But what you are getting is a complete, running first-gen Bronco with a clean title and some really solid bones. These old Broncos are getting harder to find, especially rust-free ones, and prices are only going up. For someone looking to get into the classic SUV game without breaking the bank, this could be a really sweet project. Just remember, you'll need to put in some work to make it shine, but the potential is definitely there. 3. We're looking at something really special. A 1960 Ford F100 that's listed for $9,900, but the seller just dropped it to $9,200. Let me tell you, this is one interesting piece of American automotive history. This F100 is rocking its original 292 V8 engine that was rebuilt just 5,000 miles ago. And here's what makes it even more special. It's got the rare Ford Cruise-O-Matic automatic transmission. That's pretty uncommon for these old workhorses, as most came with manual gearboxes. The seller has clearly put a lot of love and work into this truck. We're talking about a seriously extensive list of improvements. New gas tank, rebuilt original Holley carb, new fuse bank, fresh brake system with disc brakes up front, new shocks, and those period-correct hubcaps with beauty rings. The cab's been treated with Raptor protective coating, and they've added some nice modern touches like a custom black headliner, 3-point seat belts, and even some practical additions like underhood lighting and hidden fog lights. At 163,000 original miles, this truck's seen its share of roads, but with that recent engine rebuild, it's got plenty of life left. The seller's been using it as a daily driver around the golf course, which shows it's reliable enough for regular use, though they're honest about it still needing some TLC to be a full-time daily driver. What really catches my attention is that they've addressed the common rust issues these trucks often face, treating the underside and frame with rust reducer paint. They're even throwing in some leftover lunar green paint with the sale. 4. We're looking at a pretty interesting situation. A 1960 Ford F100 that's listed for just $505. Yeah, you heard that right. $505. And let me be completely honest with you about this one. This is definitely what we'd call a project truck, and the seller is being refreshingly honest about its condition. The truck's got a V8 with a rebuild at 18K miles. But here's the kicker. It won't start. The seller's been upfront about throwing in the towel after trying everything they could think of to get it running again. The odometer shows 12,525 miles, which is likely after rolling over, and while it apparently roars when rolling, when it was running, right now it's more of a driveway ornament than a truck. The wife wants it gone, and honestly, that explains the rock-bottom price. Look, I've got to be straight with you. At $505, you're basically buying a puzzle that needs solving. Could it be something simple like fuel delivery issues or electrical problems? Maybe. Could it be something more serious? Absolutely. But here's the thing. If you're handy with tools and love a good challenge, this could be an amazing opportunity. These old F100s are getting harder to find, and even as a parts truck, it might be worth the asking price. Just remember, you're not buying a running truck. You're buying a project that's going to need some serious detective work and probably a good amount of cash to get back on the road. But if you manage to figure out what's wrong and fix it, well, that's the kind of story that makes for great garage talk. 5. We're checking out a really clean 1981 Dodge Ram D150 that's caught my eye, listed at $12,000. And let me tell you, this one's pretty special. First off, we're looking at a Survivor with just 86,000 original miles, which is incredibly low for a 42-year-old truck. It's powered by Dodge's legendary Slant 6 engine. That's the 225 cubic inch 3.7L power plant that's known for being practically bulletproof. The seller's done some important maintenance too, with a recent tune-up, new oil pump, and a fresh carburetor. What really makes this truck stand out is its condition. The two-tone paint combo in royal blue and white looks fantastic, and it's still rocking that classic Ram's head hood ornament, a detail that collectors really look for. The interior is reportedly in great shape, which is rare for these work trucks, and it's got AC, though we don't know if it's blowing cold. The current owners had it for 4 years after bringing it up from Texas, which typically means less rust concerns than northern trucks. The fact that it's a Texas truck with a clean title is definitely a plus. 6. We're checking out something pretty unique, a 1965 Chevy C10 that's been transformed into a serious off-road machine, listed at $11,500. And let me tell you, this isn't your typical classic C10. What we've got here is a really interesting hybrid build. It's a 65 C10 body sitting on a 78 K10 4X4 frame and running gear. The seller's been honest about the odometer having rolled over, so those 36,000 miles shown aren't telling the whole story. This truck's got some serious upgrades. We're talking about a 6-inch Superlift kit rolling on 35-inch Toyo tires with powder-coated wheels. Under the hood, there's a 350 V8 breathing through an Edelbrock carb and long tube headers. The drivetrain's been built for durability with an SM 465 manual transmission. That's one tough gearbox. And an NP 205 transfer case. They've rebuilt the GM 12-bolt rear end and upgraded the Dana 44 front with new bearings and ball joints. The body's received some attention too. New floor pans have been welded in, which is important on these old trucks, and the interior's gotten some love with a reupholstered seat and fresh carpet. Modern touches include LED headlights, a flaming river steering column, and even air horns with a compressor. At $11,500, you're getting a unique build that combines classic looks with modern off-road capability. The seller mentions it's been reliable, which is important for a modified truck like this. It's not a show truck or a numbers-matching restoration. It's a purpose-built rig that's meant to be used and enjoyed. 7. We're looking at something really interesting. A 1955 Chevy Apache listed for $15,000, and I've got to be completely honest with you about this one. First, let's address the elephant in the room. This truck is being sold without a title, which is a pretty big red flag that you need to be aware of. Depending on your state, this could be a major headache to sort out. The seller's description is pretty light on actual mechanical details, which makes me a bit cautious. While they're marketing it as excellent condition, they're also positioning it as a perfect project for restoration, which seems a bit contradictory. The odometer has rolled over, so we don't know the true mileage. Now, the 1955 Apache is an absolutely iconic truck. And yes, it's true that Pixar's Mater character from Cars was inspired by this model. These trucks have beautiful styling with those distinctive front-end designs and classic proportions that you just can't find in modern vehicles. But here's the thing. At $15,000 for a truck that needs restoration and doesn't have a title, you really need to think this through. These Apaches are getting harder to find and prices are climbing, but the missing title issue could be a real problem. 8. We're looking at something pretty special. A 1974 Chevy K33 Plus 3 Crew Cab that's listed for $16,000. And let me tell you, this isn't your everyday square body. First off, this is a rare bird, a K30 Crew Cab with a short bed configuration. That's a combination you don't see often, especially from 1974. Under the hood, it's packing a monster 454 big block with an Edelbrock 4-barrel carb and HEI distributor, which means this thing's got plenty of muscle to move those 37-inch Yokohama tires. The seller's done some serious work here. There's a rebuilt automatic transmission with just 1,000 miles on it, a 6-inch suspension lift, and they've addressed a lot of maintenance items. We're talking new wheel bearings, axle seals, hub seals, fresh brakes all around, new ignition components, and a full fluid service. The interior's gotten some love too, with a new dash and door panels. What's really cool about this truck is that being pre-1975, you don't have to worry about emissions testing in most states, which opens up a world of modification possibilities. The seller claims it cruises at 80 miles per hour, which is pretty impressive for a lifted heavy-duty truck from the 70s. At $16,000, you're getting a lot of truck here, and one that's already had significant work done. These Crew Cab K30S are getting harder to find, especially in short bed configuration. While it's not a fully restored show truck, the seller mentions you can finish restoring it or drive it as is. It sounds like a solid driver that's ready to work or play. 9. We're looking at something really special. A 1955 Chevy Cameo listed for $15,000. And this isn't your average old pickup truck. Let me break this down for you. The Cameo is a legitimate piece of automotive history. Only 10,320 were made between 1955 and 1958, making this one of the rarest and most innovative trucks of its era. For those who might not know, the Cameo was basically the first luxury pickup truck, featuring smooth fiberglass bedsides that gave it a more car-like appearance. It's essentially the grandfather of today's high-end pickup trucks. This particular example is running a 283 V8 paired with a 3-speed manual transmission. The seller's been honest about the truck's fair condition, and there are some issues to address. The most notable is the tailgate situation. It's missing one latch and the skin, though the seller mentions these parts can be found online and includes new retractors. On the positive side, there's been some recent maintenance work done. New brakes, alternator, battery, and tires. The truck runs and drives well enough to have current registration, which is always a good sign. It also comes with a 55 hood and some miscellaneous parts, which could be helpful for restoration. At $15,000, you're buying a piece of truck history that needs some love. While it's not a show-ready example, these Cameos are becoming increasingly collectible, and good ones can sell for serious money. Just remember, finding specific Cameo parts can be challenging and expensive due to their rarity. 10. We're checking out a 1966 Ford F100 short bed that's listed for $4,850. And I've got to tell you, this one's got some interesting potential. Let's start with the heart of this truck. It's running a 352 V8 with Flowmaster exhaust, which should give it that classic muscle truck rumble we all love. It's paired with a 4-speed manual transmission that the seller says shifts smoothly, and it's got new tires and various new parts. Now here's where we need to be real. This truck comes with a salvage title, which is something you definitely need to consider. The odometer shows 86,930 miles, but on a 57-year-old truck, that number could have rolled over at least once. What's interesting is the patina on this one. the seller's marketing it as either a potential rat rod project or a candidate for full restoration. That gray paint with natural wear could be perfect for the increasingly popular patina look that many builders are going for these days. At $4,850, and they're open to offers, you're getting a running and driving classic F100 with the desirable short bed configuration. The price point seems fair considering the salvage title, especially in today's market where classic truck prices have been climbing. These old Fords are getting harder to find, particularly ones that are still running and driving. 11. We're looking at a pretty interesting 1947 Ford pickup that's listed for $9,500, and this one's got some stories to tell. This isn't your typical 47 Ford, because under the hood, it's running a more modern Ford 302 V8 paired with a C4 automatic transmission. That's a popular and reliable powertrain swap that gives you classic looks with more modern reliability and power. The seller mentions it's an Arizona truck, which usually means good news for the body since these trucks tend to rust in wetter climates. Now let's be real here. The description is pretty brief, but there are a few things we need to talk about. The seller mentions it needs a fuel pump hooked up, so this isn't currently a running truck. That's something you'll need to factor into your purchase decision and budget. The odometer has rolled over, so those 100,000 miles shown aren't telling the whole story. On the positive side, it's got new tires, and the body is described as nice, which is important for a 76-year-old truck. Having an Arizona title is definitely a plus, as desert vehicles typically have better preserved sheet metal. At $9,500, you're looking at a classic truck that needs some finishing touches but appears to have good bones. The 302/C4 combo is a solid foundation for a driver, and once you get that fuel pump situation sorted out, you could have a reliable classic cruiser. 12. We're checking out a pretty interesting 1969 Chevrolet K24X4 that's listed for $17,500. And let me tell you about this piece of American iron. This K20 is running a 350 V8 paired with a 4-speed manual transmission. That's a classic bulletproof combination that Chevy got right back in the day. What's really catching my attention here is that the seller's highlighting some crucial points that matter on these old trucks: solid corners, good rockers, and a rust-free frame. If you know these late 60s Chevys, you know these are typically the first places to check for rust issues. Some cool features on this one include a Warn winch. That's not a cheap add-on. And a dual exhaust setup that the seller says sounds nice. It's also got an interesting 3-tank fuel setup with a brand new cab tank. That's some serious fuel capacity for long hauls or off-road adventures. Now let's be honest, it's not perfect. The seller's upfront about it needing paint, but they mention the interior is nice, which is often the harder part to fix on these old trucks. With 69,000 miles showing, this truck's likely seen its share of work. But being from Nevada, it's probably avoided the rust issues that plague trucks from wetter regions. At $17,500, and they're open to offers, you're looking at what appears to be a solid foundation for either a restoration project or a driver as is. These late 60s K20S are getting harder to find, especially with good bones and in 4x4 configuration. 13. We're looking at a 1978 Ford Bronco listed at $15,500. And while the seller's description is pretty brief, there are some interesting points to discuss here. This is a second-generation Bronco, which had a relatively short production run from '78 to '79, making them somewhat rare finds today. It's packing the desirable 351 V8 engine paired with a 4-speed manual transmission. That's a combo that serious Bronco fans really look for. The fact that it comes with a Marti report is significant because that gives us verified production details and helps confirm the truck's originality. The seller mentions recent work on both the fuel system and brakes, which are always good things to have done on these vintage 4x4s. With 134,000 miles on the clock, that's actually pretty reasonable for a 45-year-old vehicle. Now, I've got to be honest, the description is surprisingly sparse for a $15,500 asking price. While they're claiming good condition, we'd really want to know more about the body condition, rust situation. These were prone to rust in several areas. and the status of other mechanical systems. That yellow paint looks pretty eye-catching in the market where many of these came in earth tones. At $15,500, you're in the ballpark for a solid second-gen Bronco, especially if it's rust-free and mechanically sound. These trucks have been steadily appreciating, particularly with the renewed interest in Broncos, thanks to Ford's modern revival. 14. We're looking at a pretty interesting 1974 Chevy Blazer project listed at $12,000. And let me be straight with you about what we're dealing with here. First off, this isn't your typical K5 Blazer. This is a serious project that's been set up for some heavy-duty off-road action. The big news here is the 1-ton drivetrain upgrade featuring a Dana 60 Kingpin front axle and a 14-bolt rear, both equipped with ARB lockers. That's some serious hardware. The transfer case setup is equally impressive with a NP205/NP203 doubler combination. The bodywork is where things get really interesting. The sellers had American Stripping Company in Sacramento handle the professional repairs, addressing those notorious K5 rust spots like the upper rails under the top and rocker panels. The floor's been prepped and sealed, and the inner front fenders are painted and ready for assembly. Having these trouble areas properly addressed is a huge plus. Now let's be clear about what this isn't. It's not a running vehicle. There's no engine or transmission, and it's missing seats, though the brackets are included. It's essentially a rolling chassis with a solid body, ready for your powertrain of choice. At $12,000, you're buying a project with some serious potential. The expensive and difficult bodywork has been done, and the heavy-duty drivetrain upgrades would cost a small fortune to piece together. However, you'll need to factor in the cost of an engine, transmission, seats, and all the other bits needed to make it complete. 15. We're looking at a 1955 Chevrolet C10 that's listed for $28,900. And there's some interesting stuff to unpack here. First, let's clear up a small detail. Technically, this would be a 3100 series truck, as the C10 designation didn't start until 1960. But let's talk about what makes this particular truck special. It's been modernized with some serious upgrades. A fuel-injected V8, though they don't specify which one, an overdrive transmission, and a 3.73 rear end, which is a nice compromise between acceleration and highway cruising. The four-wheel disc brake upgrade is a major safety improvement over the original drums. The seller mentions this truck received a frame-up restoration about 7 years ago, and they claim it's still presenting well. The no rust ever claim is significant for a 68-year-old truck, though it's worth noting this comes with a rebuilt title, which raises some questions that you'd want to investigate. At $28,900, you're looking at the upper end of the market for these trucks, even with the modern upgrades. However, if the workmanship is high quality and the mechanicals are as good as described, you're essentially getting a classic truck with modern reliability and driving characteristics. The odometer shows 25,000 miles, which is likely since the restoration. 16. We're checking out a pretty special 1966 El Camino that's listed for $30,000. And there's some interesting details to discuss about this classic Ute. This is a 66 El Camino with the Malibu trim package, which was the more upscale version, running the classic 283 V8 paired with a Powerglide automatic transmission. That's a reliable, if not particularly sporty, powertrain combination that Chevy got right back in the day. The seller mentions this has undergone an off-frame restoration, which is a big deal as it means the vehicle was completely disassembled for rebuilding. The odometer shows 13,466 miles, but it's noted as having rolled over, so we don't know the true mileage. However, with an off-frame restoration, the mileage becomes less relevant as everything should have been rebuilt or replaced during the process. At $30,000, we're looking at serious collector car territory here. The 66 El Camino is particularly desirable because it shares its good looks with the Chevelle of the same year, and the Malibu trim adds some extra appeal. These vehicles combine the style of a muscle car with pickup truck utility, which makes them unique collector's items. 17. We're looking at something a bit different. A 1979 GMC C7000 flatbed that's listed for $6,000. And let me tell you what we're dealing with here. This is a medium-duty commercial truck, And what makes it interesting is its powertrain combination. It's running a 350 small block Chevy gas engine paired with an Allison 4-speed automatic transmission. That's a pretty solid combo. Allison transmissions are known for their durability in commercial applications, and the 350 is about as simple and reliable as engines come. The seller's being pretty straightforward about the truck's condition, listing it as fair and noting that while it has a clean title, it's currently registered as non-operational. That means you'll need to handle the registration situation before putting it to work. The odometer shows 100,000 miles, which for a commercial truck of this age isn't necessarily a deal breaker. What you're getting here is a basic workhorse. It's got power steering and power brakes, but no gooseneck hitch, which might be important depending on your intended use. The seller mentions it runs well and is sturdy and reliable, which is what you want to hear about a work truck. At $6,000, you're looking at an entry-level price for a medium-duty commercial truck. These C7000S were built to work, and if the mechanicals are as solid as described, this could be a decent value for someone needing a heavy-duty flatbed for business or farm use. 18. We're checking out a 1973 GMC C 25 3/4 ton that's listed for $12,000, and this one's got some interesting updates worth talking about. What we've got here is a long bed step-side, a configuration that's getting harder to find these days, and it's been treated to some serious mechanical upgrades. The original 350 engine has been modernized with fuel injection, which is a huge improvement over the original carbureted setup. It's paired with a 350 automatic transmission, making this a reliable powertrain combination. The sellers put in some serious work here. They've completely rewired the truck. That's a big deal on these old rigs, replaced all the steering components, and done a full suspension overhaul both front and rear. They've also added new gauges and a new gas tank. These aren't just cosmetic upgrades, these are the kind of improvements that make an old truck actually usable in modern traffic. The odometer shows 1,750 miles, but it's noted as having rolled over, so take that number with a grain of salt. However, with all the mechanical refreshing that's been done, the actual mileage becomes less important. The seller describes both the paint and interior as being in good to great condition, and they've listed the truck's overall condition as excellent. At $12,000, you're getting a modernized classic that's been mechanically sorted, which is often more valuable than a purely original truck that needs everything fixed. 19. We've got a real treat for you, a 1976 Chevy Silverado that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This classic pickup is a real head-turner, with its iconic red paint job and custom interior. Sure, the paint might be a little faded, but that just adds to its vintage charm, don't you think? Now let's talk about what's under the hood. This baby's got a 350 engine that's practically brand new, with just over 10,000 miles on it. The seller says the odometer's broken, but hey, that's just a minor detail. What matters is that this engine's got plenty of life left in it, and it's ready to take you on all sorts of adventures. The interior's been fully customized too, with power windows and all sorts of other goodies. You'll be riding in style and comfort no matter where you're headed. And with a clean title and up-to-date registration stickers, you won't have to worry about any pesky paperwork. Now I know what you might be thinking. What's the catch? Well, the seller does mention that there's some damage to the hood by the arms. But hey, that's just a small price to pay for a truck with this much character, right? The asking price is $12,500 or best offer, which seems pretty reasonable for a classic like this. But if you're interested, you'd better act fast. The seller's only accepting phone calls, so no texting or emailing. That just goes to show how serious they are about finding the right buyer for this beauty. 20. We've got a real beauty for you, a 1985 Chevrolet pickup that's looking for a new home. This short bed truck is a real head-turner, with its clean lines and rust-free body. That's right, you heard me correctly. No rust on this baby. Under the hood, you'll find a reliable 350 engine that always starts right up and is ready to take you wherever you need to go. And with only 70,000 miles on the odometer, this truck has plenty of life left in it. The seller mentions that everything works as it should, except for the AC, which needs a charge. But hey, that's an easy fix, and it's a small price to pay for a truck that's in such great condition. The interior is also very nice, with no major issues to speak of. You'll be riding in comfort and style whether you're cruising around town or hitting the open road. And with a clean title, you won't have to worry about any pesky paperwork or legal issues. Now, let's talk about the sound. The seller mentions that there's a nice rumble coming out the back, but it's not too loud. That's the perfect balance, in my opinion. You want a truck that sounds good, but you don't want to be waking up the neighbors every time you start it up. All in all, this 1985 Chevrolet pickup is a real gem. It's rust-free, reliable, and ready to go, with a clean title and a nice interior. The asking price of $18,900 might seem a little steep at first glance, but when you consider the condition of this truck and all the features it has to offer, it's actually a pretty fair deal.